Okay, one of my relatives posted a link on Facebook, which is why I don't do much on Facebook. If I shared this video amongst my family, it probably create some friction. But it was a link to, I'm not going to call it an interview because that's not really what it was. It was ego stroking on both sides, I guess. What's his name? Sean Hannity's show, Phil Robertson. Small appearance of his and talking about how he would deal with ISIS. Now, he made a big deal of walking in with his Bible and having his Bible there and how strong he is in his convictions and his faith and everything. And how he didn't care whether his show was successful or not. Of course, he's stroking the American Christian ego as hard as he can, trying to make that show successful and get rich as he can off of it, even though he's talking about how none of that matters. And he quoted some Old Testament verses, and maybe there was a New Testament verse in there or whatever else, but he was talking about how he thought members of ISIS should be converted or killed. He thought the convert option was gone, so I guess he thinks they should just be killed. We need to start dealing with them way more harshly. And that if they wanted a gunfight, he was prepared. And now, give him credit, he did say he was prepared either way. He would be prepared to sit down with them and do a Bible study and try to convert them. Or wipe them off the face of the earth. Either way. And now, what really strikes me about that is how hypocritical everything he had to say was. He basically ignored, in talking about his Christianity and his belief in Jesus Christ and how Jesus could remove your sins, he totally ignored the Sermon on the Mount, which is supposedly Christ's own words. Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So Phil should be acting meekly. He shouldn't be wanting to go over and wipe anybody out. He should just be meek and humble and low or whatever. Matthew 5:21, you have heard it said to those of old that thou shalt not kill, and whosoever does kill shall be in danger of judgment. Now, it went on to talk about how, if you wronged your brother, you were supposed to go make amends before you offered a sacrifice at the altar. But he reiterated, thou shalt not kill. He didn't say that was gone, thou shalt not kill, but yet Phil's saying go over there and kill ISIS. Now, not to say I'm in disagreement. I think fanatics like that, who are just like Christian fanatics bombing abortion clinics or killing abortion doctors, should be put down. You're not going to change that fanatical of a mind. So you have two choices: imprison them for their crimes for perpetuity, or if they want to fight to the death, go ahead and grant them that desire. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I do find a little bit of offense in myself with his statements that basically say Islam is the only radicals out there, and totally ignoring like the groups of Christian youths who hang outside homosexual nightclubs to beat anybody that's stupid enough to walk out solo. When it's cowardly because you take a group of people to attack a solo individual based strictly off of this homosexuality. So much for loving thy neighbor. So then it goes on, Matthew 5:38 and 39. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. Or in some translations just says, do not resist evil. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. So if Phil does want to go over and try to convert ISIS, he's welcome to try to do so. He should try to share the gospel with them all he wants to, but if they want to do evil unto him, he's not supposed to kill them. He's supposed to not resist that evil. Matthew 5:43 and 44, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless those that curse you, and do good to them that hate you. Pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. It doesn't say to take any other action than that. Bless them and pray for them. And love them. It doesn't say go kill them. Love them. love your enemies. So, Phil, you're supposed to love them. You're not supposed to resist evil. So you're starting to sound a whole lot hypocritical here. A whole bunch. You just totally ignore. I mean, you quote Old Testament all you want to. Although anytime we bring up, as atheists, discussions about the Bible, some of the atrocities in the Old Testament and the things that God did there, and condemning other people for the sins of their ancestors and so forth, y'all say, oh, but we're under a new covenant. It's all New Testament now. So here is the Sermon on the Mount, supposedly a speech that Christ himself gave, commands that he gave directly to his followers, that this is how you're supposed to act. Of course, then you went on in that interview to talk about how when he walked the earth, which we have no proof of, but even if he did, you said when he walked the earth, Jesus never made a mistake. Okay. In that day and time, just as now, people generally know what season fruits are in season. They know when a tree should bear fruit. Yet Christ and his disciples, on their way to Jerusalem, Jesus was hungry, saw a fig tree and leaf, and went to see if it had any fruit. Found that it had nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. So he's supposed to be God and know everything, but he doesn't know when a tree is in season to bear fruit. That's a mistake. Okay. Yet to cover his mistake, he curses the fig tree. May no one ever eat from you again. So his reaction to his own mistake is, instead of humility or saying, oh, oops, and moving on to find something to eat, is to curse this tree so that nobody else, when figs are supposed to be in season, can benefit from this tree. The tree did nothing wrong. It was, if you believe in creation, created to flower, bear fruit in a certain season, at a certain time of the year. So the tree is doing what a tree is supposed to do. But Christ, and petty and vindictive as he is, curses the tree. So they go into Jerusalem, do whatever they're doing there. When they leave, his disciples notice that the tree is withered from the root. Oh, put your faith in God, because he will do what you ask of him. So a tree that's not in season to bear fruit deserves to be cursed by Jesus, and him killing it is a miracle. The curse killing it is a miracle. Yet this is your perfect being who made no mistakes. Explain to me how it's not a mistake. I would really appreciate that, because you're starting to sound like you don't really know that Bible you're toting around and thumping, and how he didn't really make any mistakes. I also saw a sermon that you were given, or a talk you were given, in which you used a quote, which is not a quote from James Madison, but you used it in your speech to talking about how the nation was founded on Christian values. If you research that quote a little bit, you'll find out that the guy who originally came up with it and put it in his book admitted that it was fraudulent, admitted that it was a forgery, admitted that he created it out of thin air to support his agenda. Madison never uttered those words. So speaking them as though they're a truth is telling a lie. And if you're going to try and use a quote like that to back your beliefs, I know you're just doing it for a bigger collection plate or whatever, but if you're going to try to do it, you ought to at least research it and know the truth about it. So if anybody who knows Phil or can contact Phil sees this, kind of let him know that maybe he should do a little background work, because stating a lie as though it is truth is still lying. And if he wants to prat about his integrity and convictions and everything else, he should show some. And that, Phil, I'm not very well off. I'm in a bad way. I'm on disability because I had a disc rupture in my back, caused some nerve damage. I had a really hard time for several years. I still have a really hard time. And my good Christian wife decided she just wasn't happy. Tried to get her to work with me, tried to find out what would make her happy, and tried to save the marriage, but she just didn't want to have any of it, despite what the Christian Bible says about divorce. So I gave up the fight. I let her keep the house. I'm living on a tiny sailboat that doesn't have enough room in it for my belongings. I've got half or a partial amount of my clothing on the boat, so I have my summer clothes now. When winter comes, I'm going to have to box those up, put them in storage that I'm having to pay for, and get my winter clothes out and everything else. The boat's really too small to be trying to live on, but it's the only option I've got right now. So you know, if you go on further in your Bible, let me see if I can get the tablet back up here and remember the verse. Further in that same speech, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:42, give to him that ask of you, and from him that would borrow, turn not away. So it's telling you to give to anybody that asks you. You know, and it also talked about just previous to that, you know, if somebody asks for your coat, give him your shirt as well. You know, it's supposed to give more than what somebody asks of you. Especially since, as you said in the Sean Hannity little ego stroking, that, you know, riches on this earth were of no value to you. So I'm asking you, you know, you should be pretty well off by now. I'm not saying it's not through hard work on your part or anything else, but, you know, according to your own convictions, go ahead and swing me a couple $100,000. That way I could get a decent place to live, and with that, you know, my transportation issue is kind of shaky too. I could get decent transportation, I could have a decent place to live, and then my disability would be more than enough to carry me on for the rest of my life. You know, the little bit I get a month from disability would be more than enough to cover my bills and everything else. So that would do me just great. And if you want to, you know, give me the shirt off your back, as you know, give more than what I actually asked for, that's up to you. But this is what your Lord actually told you to do, right there in the Sermon on the Mount. You can look it up yourself. So let's see how much of a hypocrite you continue to be. I'm just curious. Now, I could definitely use it, but I've always, until this happened to my back and I'm no longer capable of it, I worked hard for anything I had. You know, I try not to ask anybody for anything. Anything I got, I worked hard for. So don't get me wrong, you know, while I could use it, I don't expect it. I mean, even if you gave it to me, I would use the part of it I really needed to get something decent and then give the rest of it either back to you, or if you didn't want it, give it to the poor. It doesn't really matter to me. I just would like better living accommodations, transportation I could rely on, things of that nature. And I brought this up to another guy that wanted to be pretty asinine in some of his comments to one of my videos. You know, you prattle about how big your faith is and everything else. Well, here, this is what Christ actually said to you. Give to anybody that asks. This guy claimed to be a millionaire. So, well, fine, float me about $20,000. You know, I could really, really use it. But the thing is, I don't expect any Christian to ever honor that verse. I really don't. You know, if you ask them, well, I gave at the office, or I only give to this, or I only give to that. Well, that's not what Christ said. It said, give to any that ask. But I really don't expect anybody to ever do it. So that's why I put it out there. If somebody did do it, I'd probably die of shock, and I would put the money to the exact same use I just said I would need it for. But I don't really expect it. But if anybody knows, Phil knows how to get a hold of him, let him know. That's my challenge to him. He's already shown with his, kill ISIS, just murder them, wipe them off the face of the earth, that he doesn't want to follow any of that. Love your neighbor, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, the meek inherit the earth, or anything else. All he's concerned about is floating, or promoting, rather, his viewpoint, stroking the ego of the American populace, or the Christian portion of the American populace, and pumping things up so that he does have more fame and fortune and everything else. So that's how it appears. Because the things he stated are not what Jesus actually preached. He did talk about how he came not to bring peace, but to bring a sword to, pit son against father and mother against daughter and so forth and so on. But he also said not to kill, do not resist evil, turn the other cheek. Right there in the Sermon on the Mount. Meek shall inherit the earth, so on, and all that other nonsense in the Sermon on the Mount, which it really is, because as you have stated, we need to stand up to the evil in this world. We don't need to sit there and not resist it. We need to do something about it. We need to protect the weak for humanity's sake, not for any religion's sake. Just out of empathy, we need to try to do what is right, and we know what is right because of that empathy, because we know what profits society and harm society. So I agree that we do need to deal very harshly with groups like ISIS. Not solely ISIS, but any other radical fundamentalist groups that are willing to kill other people because of a religious belief, including radical Christian groups, because they're out there still, you know. But for you as a Christian to say those things is kind of hypocritical. When you read the Sermon on the Mount, when you go by Christ's direct words. So let's see, Phil.